Okay, everybody, in the 90s, Esther House was able to put screenwriting on the spotlight, something that's never happened before. But with the scripts of like Basic Instinct, Sliver, Jagged Edge, and this movie, Jade, he was able to master a financial fortune, which is pretty rare for screenwriting.
Yeah.
In previous episodes, we talked about Shane Black as a prominent screenwriter in the 90s. We'll talk about the one that put it in the spotlight, and we're going to critique Jade.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hi, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, once again, thank you for continuing to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We do have a Patreon. Check that out. So for great deals to tell us what films we critique, as well as get some good little tidbits we have in there as well. Both Kyle and I are critics of the members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics reviews as well as ours. And today we're going to talk about the 1995 Jade.
Yes. So when an influential millionaire is murdered in San Francisco, the assistant DA, David Corelli, is brought in to investigate. While dodging threats from the local elite, he comes to suspect that a former love may have been involved. As David searches for the unusual truth, his personal relationships are stretched to the brink.
Okay, so this is maybe, I don't know, was David Caruso still in NYPD Blue at the time?
So he left NYPD Blue to pursue Hollywood acting in films. And after this film and another film tanked, he contemplated quitting until CSI Miami came around.
Okay, so this is probably his CSI Miami audition tape. This is before he had the gag and gimmick. So if you watch this and you see David Caruso, it's not the David Caruso gimmicks that he eventually evolved and got into when he did CSI Miami. This is very much the NYPD Blue David Caruso. Talking about this film, this is Esther House.
Esther House, yeah.
The script. Very convoluted script, but this is not his intent. It was kind of written, rewriting. Billy Friedkin directed. He kind of written it. So he couldn't really understand. I think he didn't really follow what the story was.
Esther House almost took his name off the credits with how much he felt his script was taken out of his hands. Friedkin admitted later on, the script is almost 100% his at this point. Like, the finished script to that film had been rewritten and readjusted to the point where he said, I don't think there's a single line of remaining dialogue in the film. Which brings me to the question of why even hire someone like, Joe Esther House. But
especially if you're going to pay a lot of money, because he does spec script, which is just you buy it on the spot. You don't read it or anything.
But I think maybe he was seeing what a lot of us were kind of seeing with Esther House's work, which is that there was kind of a repetition to it. There was a lot of similarities between some of his pulpier work. You got Basic Instinct, you got Sliver, you got this film, you got
Showgirls,
what eventually, I would say ended his career in many ways. Showgirls, he still did some writing after that, but Showgirls was the one where it was like, maybe this isn't working as well. So maybe it might have been a little bit of a benefit that he had someone else who had the William Friedkin chutzpah, taking over that script. But you don't know.
Right. Eventually, I'll get into why it didn't work very well, why critics kind of trashed it. Some things that Billy Friedkin said it was his best experience making the film. He enjoyed it. He liked the product.
He thinks it's his best film.
Yes,
of all of his movies, which I find shocking to say the least. I didn't dislike the movie. Let me just be clear about that. But shocking to say the least that it's his favorite.
Sometimes we talked about Dashiell Hammett said his best story was Glass Key.
Yeah.
And the most celebrated story is Maltese Falcon, and he kind of doesn't really regard that.
Yeah.
But a lot of time artists are like, "This is my best work," and we're kind of like, really? So. Jade comes in 1995. This is after, I believe, Showgirls. This is actually the last feature film from Joe Esther House. Because eventually he would just write books. He did a critical analysis book of Bill Clinton after this, so he became more as an author. He tried to develop a story with Mel Gibson, and that kind of fell through. So he is kind of really not just really disbanded or left, but he just kind of been able to just sit and pick choices of what he wants to do.
Yeah.
He's a writer central. That's pretty much what he is.
Yeah. He's got the things he does very well as a writer too. I think Basic Instinct is one of the top line erotic thrillers ever made. Maybe my personal favorite even. And I think when you see how he's able to coordinate the characters and really not move the plot forward in that film at all. Most of that film is about characters pushing plot inches at a time.
It's more or less a Michael Douglas film, because when you talk Basic Instinct, your mind pops Sharon Stone, but it's pretty much Michael Douglas film.
And then when you look at something even to the opposite effect, I think the nadir of his work being Showgirls, you see a movie where he's doing the same thing, but it's not as successful. The plot never really moves. The
Gets
characters
thinner and
never
thinner.
really push.
Yeah.
It runs out of steam. And so when you have a film like Jade, it's kind of that question of, again, like, how much did he bring to the table? How much did Friedkin
What would be
bring
the
in?
original concept? Well, I can see a concept of a mystery, but what is the original take that he would
Yeah.
get?
I think part of it might have to do with the... You know, we look at Basic Instinct not so much as a cop film, even though Michael Douglas is playing a cop. This is more geared towards the police procedural aspect of it, which I like about that. I like that it kind of takes a very different tone to essentially a very similar story. We've got David Caruso, who's known for his entire career for playing police officers. To the
Pretty
point
much,
where
right, yeah.
I saw him, I mean, First Blood, he's a police officer. And,
Right, I think
you know,
Kiss of Death. Too.
yeah, when you find a film, a rarity of his, like Session 9, where he doesn't play a cop, it's kind of like, wait, shouldn't you have glasses on, sir? But then you get Linda Fiorentino.
Right, this is the reason why we kind of picked this movie.
Yeah.
Because it's Linda's second film. And I decided to go off, but I think this is the film that kind of, she didn't really want to do movies anymore because she's going to be pitching to this kind of sultry, salacious prostitute kind of magnet. Yeah,
the two films are very different, but they feel very similar. Does that make sense? I
Yeah,
guess where
it
it's
does
like
to me.
watching it, I'm like, I
Hopefully it's to you.
can see like from her character, because her character is the poster child of both films. She's on both posters.
Right.
You maybe can't tell in Jade because she's facing the other direction, but she's in both posters. She's the showcase of the film. It's too bad that she never was able to carouse around that one, because I think like when you see what the good work she does, even in supporting roles, things like Men in Black, I really liked her in Men in Black. I think she's phenomenal in Dogma, but again, they're two films that don't really highlight her performance in particular.
I agree, but even with Last Seduction and this movie and the ones you cited, I don't think we've ever seen her full potential, what she's capable of doing, or had the opportunity.
Yeah.
So, and then I don't think she just wanted to do these very salacious, erotic kind of a dance.
I think it became a thing
Last
for
Seduction is
her
not really erotic, but
when you look at The Last Seduction, she was willing, she was more than willing to say no to a body double. I'll just do the role. Like, I want to be involved. I want to be invested, which is something that I personally wouldn't do. I would take the body double. But I admire the fact that she was willing to, like, put herself out there, get as invested in a role as she is. But then at the same time, when you do that in one film, you're gonna get courted for another, and it's not fair, but it's the way it is. You know, you do a villain role, you get quoted for another villain, and that becomes your whole thing. Yeah. When I look at this movie compared to Last Seduction 2, I see that I like the characters of Last Seduction. I like the mystery that's at play in Jade. If I could jam those two movies together and make something out of it, I think I'd have something that's really a winner.
I think I'd agree. The other reason I select this film, because very much like we talked about with The Big Sleep, convoluted stories and noirs is kind of the staple. And this is not intentional. This is just not organic. This was rewrites and somebody, it was the process made this convoluted. So I think the convoluted story, eventually you think about it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense from the murder mystery to the end, but we like the journey. And we have a car chase. We don't know who's the person behind the car. It's obviously the killer, but it's an authentic, really good car chase. I think Billy Friedkin, he likes to do car chases. Yeah. I think this is better. This is far more entertaining than French Connection.
Oh, I gotta disagree with you on that one. I think French Connection holds that spot well. I think Bullet's one of the best of all time. I watched Bullet in preparation for an episode.
Bullet's authentic, yes, but I think the stunts for this one.
He's having more. I guess he's taking more risks in this one. He's he's getting grandiose.
Even though you have it's palpable. That's your favorite word. Yeah. For French Connection, you feel the intensity, almost authentic. Like somebody's gonna die.
Yeah, I did feel that with Jade a lot too. Yeah, was that the chase scene itself really well crafted, and again, you have to give it to any person who can direct action the way Billy Friedkin does. Yeah. That's a win across the board. When you mentioned the convoluted story, I didn't think there was any convoluted story to this for the first hour.
Right.
I had to pause the video at an hour in. I got an important phone call. It was a personal family emergency. So I was on the phone for like an hour and a half. Came back after that was done, trying to figure out this thing, and I popped the movie back on. From that last half hour, it was like, yeah, they're understanding the film too much. Let's just throw all this stuff in there. I mean, Michael Biehn's character goes from A to Z,
right?
Like in the course of maybe 30 off-screen seconds in the film, where all of a sudden he's now a completely different character, and it's like, why are you doing that to the Bean?
We don't see the change. It's just projected. We don't see why the change or anything. And Michael Biehn is another one. He's like, I didn't understand the story as well.
He didn't realize he was the villain until he started shooting the scene.
Right. And he's not really
he's not really even the villain.
The villain, right?
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Jade yet, my gosh, stop. And I think it'd probably be more clear, a little more clear because it's very much like a Jeffrey Epstein kind of a thing.
There is kind of that level of like a major deal coming undone.
Go into a cabin and then you entrap rich people, blackmailing. You got politics, you got billionaires. It's very, what English say, it's very poshy looking kind of a film. Everybody's ritzy. I mean, what's that library? It's got a double-deck library house.
What I like about it, though, is that it's shot in a way. Cinematographer, I always screw up the name, Andrzej Bardowiak. Who did Speed, did some of the Lethal Weapon movies.
Yes, he did.
What I really admire about him is that he captures the film the way it needs to be captured, in the sense of the storytelling aspect. Yeah. You know, like he gives a heroic look in Speed to Keanu Reeves. Every time he's on film, Keanu Reeves is a god in that movie because of the way he's shot. He is elevated. You know, in this film, he captures everything with a dark, seedy lens. So even though everything is, voluptuous and people are gaudy and wearing their jewelry, there's this like gross, unclean feeling to the whole thing.
Especially the banquets.
Yeah,
banquet suites.
I primarily think of that the first crime scene. Because it's a very posh, it's a very lovely looking home.
You almost want to. I remember
it looks
as a kid,
like someone needs to call a cleaner.
Right. I get because it's very full. That's the other thing. The authentics are very full in this.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I remember, well, I'm not really a kid. I was like, when I saw this in the 90s as a teenager, you almost want to like solve the mystery. So I would pause it, try to look for maybe trinkets, almost like The Big Sleep or Maltese Falcon. Look at if there's something in the shot that will help me solve the mystery.
I had that where I was trying to read like the different, especially the little canisters that he finds, which have a very interesting item inside them.
Because they take time investigating and just shoot the camera.
And I felt like the camera lingered on that long enough where I was able to be like, okay, I know that symbol right there, and I have that letter, and like trying to like figure out the whole thing there. But
this is definitely not a film if you're a teenager to watch with your parents. It'll just be uncomfortable.
See, I had that with Basic Instinct. Yeah.
And I think what works with Basic Instinct and doesn't work here is Paul Verhoeven very much works into the overlapping, is it parody or not? All the time. Is it authentic? Am I shooting this for legit or shooting parody? Because when you watch Basic Instinct, it's almost like you think Michael Douglas is going to turn the camera and go, really? Yeah. Turn to us and like, I can't believe she's really doing this. When she's smoking a cigarette in the car talking about, my next book, it's about a detective and all this stuff, and it's like very, almost like comedy. Yeah. Almost set it up. And I think Billy Friedkin doesn't do parody. He shoots it legit. And I think if you do Joe's scripts, like Showgirls or something like that, you want to remind something like Paul, you almost have to do a jokingly parody filming it, even though you're doing it serious as well. Yeah. And I think that would be far more effective. You go back and say, why did Basic Instinct work? It's not the salacious, everybody talks about she's not wearing underwear or all this stuff, but it's almost like, it feels like this is a comedy bit almost.
Well, and you look at going to that scene, again, I'm only using this as a comparison piece. You go to that scene where she does uncross her legs, and you have Wayne Knight, a.k.a. Newman from Seinfeld, go instant flop sweat. To the point where he's got more sweat on his brow than anyone would ever have on their brow in the span of 4 seconds. It's almost like someone threw a gallon of water.
And it's almost like a John Hughes thing.
It's less parody, more over the top. Like it's just to the nth degree.
Exaggeration.
And that's kind of what Joe does. I mean, if you look at Showgirls, that sex scene in the pool, that is not realistic. That is over the top.
And I think Billy likes to he's from documentary filmmaking. I think he tries to capture it almost as is to make the content shocking. And you need somebody like maybe Sidney Lumet who works in parody, somebody like Paul Verhoeven, where even though it's like Starship Troopers, it's supposed to be a serious sci-fi, we're supposed to be laughing at the exaggeration details of everything.
Well, when you look at something like The Exorcist, William Friedkin directed that film, and he reached out to members of the Catholic society to get every detail as correct as possible. Yeah. When he did French Connection, I mean, it's based on a guy that he actually followed, a cop that he followed. And he was able to actually kind of build a story around how this fictional version of the real cop would have reacted. And it's like those two films, documentary almost in style because of the attention to detail. And again, he's taking a script from an over-the-top director, something that's very out of left field. And I think that's where the struggle kind of is. And I don't think that the film fails in that way. But I think it's missing some beats,
I think you're shooting legit. And that's why my perspective, my problem is that you're shooting it as a legit based on the erotica with get people on the tickets, you sell that, but you're trying to a murder mystery tanglement, spiderweb tanglement, and that's really not it is. And you have to do something that's overly the top exaggeration, not just a car chase scene. Something that pops and makes everything almost like ridiculously exaggerated, which like Basic Instinct. Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's one fix I would make for this film that I think would help with the performance level that's at play. And it's again, I don't think David Caruso is a bad actor. I think he might have been miscast in this film. And part of it is because you only see him in cop roles, that this one almost feels underwhelming to him with what he's doing. Because it's the same thing we've seen a lot of ways. I would take David Caruso and Michael Biehn and switch them.
I think you need somebody like that.
You need Michael Biehn.
Because he needs a character. This is weird because we're going to agree. David Caruso seems to blend into the story. You need a character like that that pops out of the story, almost like a conscientious character that he's like, I am the story and you're all players.
Yeah.
And Michael Biehn can kind of do that. Where David Caruso doing the role in it becomes part of the storyline, becomes part of the wallpaper of just going through the entanglements and the interactions with everybody.
And he's a very emotionless person, in how he performs as the character. And I think you need someone. I'm a big Michael Biehn apologist, though. I'm the guy who's like, how many roles does he have? Give him 2 more. I'm always on the side of giving Michael Biehn more. And I think if he had led this film instead of been in the background, maybe give Caruso the more kind of villainous turn, it would not only shock the people that know him from NYPD Blue or eventually CSI Miami, but it would also give the light then to someone like a Michael
somebody
Biehn
can carry somebody else that can carry a title.
Yeah, and I think he could have a little bit more charismatic interactions with Linda Fiorentino. I think him and Chaz Palminteri would have a lot more heat in their scenes where they're kind of facing off.
Chaz is a little stiff, and that's not his fault. I don't think he has much to offer.
Yeah, and I think I do get the sensation that his character was heavily altered from the first day of shooting to the last day of shooting. Just because, again, there's things introduced with him that don't feel right, to the point where even the ending of the film is different depending on where you watch it. There's a director's cut of the film in which, spoiler alert, Chaz Palminteri's character gets caught. And then there's the theatrical cut where it ends with him revealing that he did it. Yeah. And then the movie just ends.
Which is we're not even
sure where that goes,
Which he did it, and how did he get that guy to strap into?
Yeah, that part was where I was kind of like, okay, hold on a second.
Playing sex games, he got him strapped in there, and then he kills him, which is really, all right. How'd you do that, money wise? But I think you need something that is exaggerated. I like Richard Crenna.
Yeah,
I like him, but you need somebody that's going to be almost like a Mel Brooks governor from Blazing Saddles. You got caught. Something that just makes it outrageous rather than threatening.
I think you need 2 characters. I know that the idea is always to shrink down characters, combine people. I think you get a Richard Crenna and you get another guy, 2 guys that are both kind of involved in this racket at the same time, and they each have different perspectives. It kind of that would have reminded me a bit of how the connection between the Harrison Ford character and the Robert Duvall character in The Conversation. Where it's they're both on the same side of things, but they're both very different in how they're reacting to the plot. Yeah. And I think Crenna, he does very good with what he's supposed to do in this film. I would have liked to have seen a more unhinged take. So just someone else. Just give me 2 different perspectives.
Yeah, and it's just too much scene upon scene. I'm not going to fault the editing, but it just seems like, now this person has an interaction. Now David Caruso has an interaction with this person. Now David Caruso has an interaction with this person. And it just followed on numbers, even though that doesn't feel like it has an authentic flow to it. It's overall a good looking film. I do like it. I do excellent choices on set locations. I do like the car chasing. It's hard to shoot something like that and the danger of that. I think a lot of the art directions, a lot of the choices, but overall story I think is just where it's going to need help.
Yeah, there's a lot of great going on. Music, cinematography. I can't say much for editing because I don't know how much footage he had to work with.
Right.
But I think, production design, Alex Tavares, who did The Forger, did Beethoven. I also want to recognize set decorator Gary Fettis, who has also done a lot of Christopher Nolan films, Interstellar and Dunkirk. When we talk about those lavish scenes, that's a lot of set decoration. That is a lot of putting those pieces in place, making sure nothing stands out in an unpaired way. I think a lot of the technical aspects of the film very strong. But I think the push and pull between an Esther House and a Friedkin may have lost them both the battle here.
I'm going to do something that Kyle always refers to. I think this is a remake. I think you got a juicy material, especially with the news of Jeffrey Epstein, and this very much, of course, almost runs parallel.
Yeah.
Very much. I think everybody's, even if you do a convoluted story, you can clean it up and offers like a lot of suggestions that you have.
Yeah.
You have something there for it.
I think there's an opportunity to revisit the material because, again, and that's the problem is why do we do remakes? We do remakes because the original was popular. We want to use the brand name. Yeah. This film is virtually non-existent in the conversation right now.
Right. If
people that have seen it, they know it. But even myself, I was like, wait, is that Poison Ivy? And I was like, wait, is that Last Seduction?
Yeah,
like
for
I was
kids
combining with other movies.
If you're younger than a teenager in the 90s, this probably went past your radar.
Yeah, I would have seen too much. But I do think, it's prime for the elements of a remake, or even just revisiting the same kind of story, cleaning it up a little bit, and pushing it forward. I think it's possible.
Yeah, and you can have a director that's not afraid to go beyond exaggeration. I think that's what it needs, authentic exaggeration, to the point it almost looks ridiculous. Be comfortable doing that?
Yeah, if this is the screenplay he's working with, that's what you need. Or else you need a more grounded screenplay to give to Billy. Yeah. But it's just the two of them just probably did not have a connection, whereas Esther House and a number of other filmmakers were able to kind of bridge that connection a lot better.
Yeah. So it was great to revisit. There's a lot of things I can remember retaining. I haven't seen this movie since 1997, so it's been a long time. But I still like this. Then I go, yeah, now I know why it's forgettable.
I liked the experience of watching it, but it's a case where, again, that last 30 minutes could have done something grand.
It
could have done something really special, because I was really engaged with the first hour. And again, this is something where my wife's always on the couch, not really she doesn't watch as many movies as I do, so she's kind of just relaxing after a long day. 5 minutes into this movie, she's like, oh wait, are you just starting this? This looks really interesting. Like, it draws people in with that first hour. The last half hour didn't do it for me as much.
Right. Yeah.
Give me more beans.
So, have you seen Jade?
Yeah. Let us know your thoughts down below on the film. What is your favorite of the latter half of William Friedkin's career? It's hard not to say something like French Connection or The Exorcist if you're talking early, but tell us one of your favorite films from the 90s, maybe that he worked on. Down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. While you're down there, please like and subscribe. There are 2 free things that you can do that don't cost you a single
ahead and
dime.
like and subscribe.
Do it right now. We'll wait. Okay, we're good. And while you're down there, please check out the Patreon. You get access to Picks with Kyle and Nick, our monthly show where we do special recommendations for you. You also get access to our Road to De Palma show, where we introduce another Brian De Palma film.
We have to do one. We'll do another one eventually.
We're doing one this month. We gotta figure out which one yet. But please check out all those options down below. You can join the Patreon for as low as $1. Check it out. And from all of us here at the show, thank you for joining us. You can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts.
All right.
And I did like the cliche that the cops had to play handball, or the cops.
Yeah, that's true.
You always got to do handball. Right.